I was slacking off at work when I stumbled across a juicy Reddit thread. The title read, Gen Z Intern exposes the so-called most employee-friendly company. As I scrolled through the details, my brow furrowed. The description looked suspiciously familiar. I immediately called an all-hands meeting to ask if anyone was unhappy with our company benefits. Before I could even finish my sentence, Georgina, our newly hired intern, stood up. Honestly, Jessica, I don't think our benefits are that great, she said, tossing her hair. If we're really trying to build a humane workplace, the company should provide free housing and a private shuttle service to pick us up and drop us off every day. I literally gave each employee a $1,500 monthly stipend to cover rent and transit. That was more than enough for anyone to rent a nice place and Uber to work. So, I shut her down. But to be fair, I told everyone they could vote. They could either keep the cash stipends or switch to company-provided housing. Once they reached a consensus, they could let me know. I didn't expect that very night, the Reddit OP would update the post. Update: the boss totally lost her mind and is threatening to cancel housing stipends. Huge red flag. Avoid Firefly Creative at all costs. Reading the post, I was finally certain of the OP's identity. It was Georgina, our new intern. After all, Firefly Creative was the boutique company I had founded. Under her post, the comment section was already blowing up. OMG, is this Firefly? That's literally my dream company. I heard they have an amazing 4-day workweek. Georgina replied, You guys are so naive. Sure, it's a 4-day workweek, but you'll end up working until midnight every single day. No way. Firefly is famous for its perks. My company only gives me a $50 transit allowance. I heard Firefly gives like $1,000. Georgina argued back. So what? What if you live far away? $1,000 sounds like a lot, but it doesn't buy back the time you waste commuting. The commenter actually bought her logic and agreed. Then, someone else chimed in. I heard a rumor that the owner of Firefly is actually a billionaire heiress. She only started the company for fun. I had no idea where they got that gossip. But they weren't wrong. My family is rich. Very, very rich. Even if I did absolutely nothing for the rest of my life, my generational wealth could easily fund 10 lifetimes of luxury. I only started this company because I was bored out of my mind. In the beginning, I didn't care about scaling up or making massive profits. I just wanted to create a highly humane, stress-free workplace. That's why I made the benefits ridiculously good. We worked 2 days, took a day off, worked another 2 days, and then had a 2-day weekend. It basically amounted to a 4-day workweek. Not only that, but the $1,500 stipend was always paid on time. If anyone struggled with their first month's rent deposit, they could even get an advance on that money. Whenever I wanted iced coffee, I ordered Starbucks for the entire office. For holidays and birthdays, I always curated personalized gifts and surprises. Compared to actual management, I just enjoyed the vibe of taking care of people. Even if the company didn't make a dime, I had more than enough money to feed everyone forever. However, because the benefits were too good, my employees used to feel incredibly guilty. To repay my kindness, they worked their butts off. In 3 years, instead of burning money, we actually made a killer profit. Even my parents were shocked by my success. That was the only reason I had kept the company running for 3 years. But the internet trolls didn't see it that way. The comments were turning into a total war zone. Oh, so she's a trust fund baby? No wonder she doesn't know how to run a real business. She's just playing house. The only reason the company hasn't gone bankrupt is because her daddy funds it. Exactly. That's why none of their employees brag online. Who knows if the perks are even real? Working for a boss like that is low-key terrifying. If you offend her, she could blackball you from the whole industry. I stared at my phone, completely speechless. Did it ever occur to them that my employees didn't brag online because they didn't want the competition? After all, my turnover rate was virtually 0. Over the last 3 years, the number of people who had voluntarily resigned could be counted on one hand. Instead of commenting, I copied the Reddit link and dropped it directly into our company's Slack channel. I wanted to see exactly how Georgina would react. After I shared the link, the Slack channel went dead silent for a solid 30 minutes. Finally, the first notification popped up. It was Georgina. Yeah, I made the post. So what? I'm just starting a healthy workplace discussion. A healthy discussion? She was literally spreading flat-out lies. I didn't bother arguing with her on Slack. I just typed out a brief message. Meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. We're putting this to rest once and for all. I thought I had made myself clear yesterday. I wasn't against company-provided housing. I just told them to discuss it, come to a unanimous decision, and let me know so I could make the arrangements. Who knew they would turn it into a conspiracy theory? Moreover, I noticed that although the other employees remained silent, They were clearly swaying. Having worked with them for so long, I knew them inside out. They loved the company perks, and usually, they loved interacting with me. Before this, no matter what I posted in Slack, everyone would react with emojis and sweet messages. Today? Crickets. It looked like Georgina hadn't just been whispering behind my back. She had successfully brainwashed them. The next morning, when I walked into the conference room, everyone was already seated. The atmosphere was completely different from yesterday. It was heavy, tense, and cold. I walked to the front of the room, rested my hands on the table, and before I could even open my mouth, a voice cut through the silence. "So, Jessica, have you figured out how you're going to fix this?" I followed the voice and saw Georgina looking at me, her chin tilted up with sheer arrogance. For a second, I couldn't tell if she was just young and stupid, or if she was actively trying to sabotage my company. I ignored her completely, turned my gaze to the rest of the team, and asked, "What do the rest of you think?" Silence stretched for a few agonizing seconds. Finally, Sarah, one of our senior employees, spoke up. "Jessica, honestly, I also think company housing would be much more convenient. Georgina might be young, but she has a point. We didn't think about it before, but since Georgina brought it up, I support the idea." I nodded, keeping my face blank. I remembered when Sarah first interviewed here. I had asked about her career gap, and she told me how hard it was for a mother to re-enter the corporate world. So I hired her. For 3 years, she had been a dedicated, hard-working employee who always expressed how grateful she was for this job. This was the very first time she had ever challenged me. Then another employee chimed in. "Yeah, last month my landlord suddenly decided to sell the place, and I had to scramble to move. If the company provided housing, we wouldn't have to deal with that kind of stress." With Sarah taking the lead, the floodgates opened. I agree. It would take a huge load off our shoulders so we can focus on work. Throughout the discussion, I could feel Georgina smirking at me from the corner of my eye. When almost everyone had spoken, the two quiet girls sitting in the back, Grace and Margaret, stood up. "Jessica, we don't have any complaints. We're happy with whatever the company decides." These two had joined last year. They were extremely introverted and had struggled to find jobs elsewhere because of it. Although they weren't big talkers in the office, their Slack DMs to me were always filled with genuine gratitude. To say I didn't feel hurt by the others would be a lie. But these two girls managed to warm my heart, bringing a sense of calm back to me. But before I could speak, Georgina let out a loud, dramatic sigh. "Are you guys stupid? We're literally trying to fight for our rights here." Unbelievable. I couldn't help but roll my eyes at her. She was a fresh graduate. During her interview a week ago, she seemed like a sweet, polite girl. I had no idea she was actually a toxic drama queen. I curled my lips into a cold smile and said quietly, "Since you've all reached a consensus, we will implement this starting next month. The company will provide shared housing and a daily shuttle. Consequently, all housing and commuting cash stipends are canceled." I gave them exactly what they asked for. Yet, the moment the words left my mouth, their faces turned pale. I didn't care about their reaction. I simply closed my laptop. If there's nothing else, meeting adjourned. I waited 2 seconds. No one spoke, so I turned to walk out of the room. But just as my hand touched the doorknob, Georgina's voice shrilled behind me again. "Jessica, what is that supposed to mean? Are you trying to threaten us by taking away our stipends?" I turned around, looking at her in genuine confusion. "How on earth did you reach that conclusion?" She crossed her arms, her tone incredibly self-righteous. "If you aren't trying to threaten us, why are you canceling our $1,500 cash stipends?" For a second, I didn't grasp the level of audacity she was operating on. I asked flatly, "Didn't you guys just say you wanted company-provided housing?" "Yeah, but why do we have to lose our cash stipends just because you're giving us housing?" Georgina barked. "Aren't you a billionaire heiress? How can you be so cheap?" Hearing the sheer entitlement in her voice, I almost laughed out loud. If I didn't get what they were playing at now, I'd be a complete idiot. I swept my eyes over the rest of the room. Every single one of them had a look of silent agreement on their faces. Wow. So after all this drama, they wanted both. They wanted the $1,500 cash and free luxury housing with a private chauffeur. Did they think money grew on trees? Since they chose to treat me like a brainless cash cow instead of a boss, I had no intention of spoiling them anymore. I grew up with parents who never let me suffer a single day of disrespect. Why should I take attitude from my own employees? I slammed my laptop onto the table, my voice dropping to a freezing temperature. "You want free housing, private shuttles, and the cash stipends? Are you guys delusional, or do you just think I'm an idiot? Look at the market. Tell me, which company offers better perks than I do? And yet, you're letting a fresh out of college intern manipulate you like puppets. Pathetic. Seeing my genuine anger, the rest of the employees finally looked guilty. They shifted in their seats, refusing to meet my eyes. Clearly, I had been too nice for too long, making them believe I had no spine. While the others stayed quiet, Georgina kept barking. It's just $1,500. Do you really need to be this dramatic? It's not like you're hurting for cash. Or is that billionaire heiress title of yours actually fake? I didn't understand where her intense malice came from, but I didn't care to investigate. Whether she was just young and dumb or consumed by jealousy, she was absolutely nothing to me. I didn't need her approval, and I certainly didn't owe her an explanation. I gave her a long, cold stare before addressing the room. Since none of you actually care about reasonable perks, this discussion is over. We will keep the current system as it is. And from now on, I will no longer accept any requests for benefits changes. Then, I locked my eyes onto Georgina, my voice laced with warning. And you, instead of wasting your time plotting workplace rebellions, you should start worrying about whether you'll even pass your internship. Because if you don't, the company's amazing benefits won't have anything to do with you. I rarely fired anyone, but she had officially blacklisted herself in my book. Hearing my underlying threat, Georgina's face flushed a deep, angry red. I let out a mental scoff and turned to the rest of the room. If anyone is unhappy with the company's current benefits, you are free to hand in your resignation. I won't stop you. But if anyone tries to pull another stunt like this under my roof, don't blame me for getting ugly. This time when I walked out, nobody dared to say a word. However, by the end of the workday, not a single person had resigned. I didn't think much of it and headed straight home. But that night, when I opened Reddit to check on the thread, I saw that Georgina had updated it again. This time, the post read, "Billionaire heiress my ass. She's just some old rich guy's kept sugar baby. No wonder she's so cheap. Guess her sugar daddy isn't giving her enough allowance." I zoomed in on the attached photo. It was a picture of my dad picking me up from work today. The photo only caught the back of my head, but my dad's face was clear as day. Judging by the angle, it was taken secretly from the office lobby. As soon as the photo was posted, the internet mob immediately began tearing me apart. EW, that guy looks old enough to be her dad. Society is so trash. Even side chicks can open companies now. Anyone know who his wife is?
Ida.
Isn't that the CEO of Sky Group? I'm going to DM their official Instagram right now. This sugar baby is disgusting. If I were the wife, I'd ruin her life. Of course, there were a few rational people in the comments. Isn't it a bit much to make up rumors like this? What if that's literally just her dad? Didn't you guys say she's a billionaire heiress? Georgina immediately clapped back at the rational commenter. Are you seriously defending her? Are you a side chick too? Also, I'm not making things up. I looked it up online. The CEO of Sky Group is named Mr. Rodriguez, but Jessica's last name is Vance. I let out a cold laugh. She had done some homework, but unfortunately, she was still an idiot. The CEO of Sky Group was indeed Mr. Rodriguez. But the actual chairman of the entire conglomerate was Mrs. Vance, my mother. My dad had married into my mother's old money family, which meant he basically worked for my mom. I proudly carried my mother's surname. Instead of arguing in the comments, I forwarded the link to my family's personal attorney. Please send a cease and desist letter and prepare a defamation lawsuit for everyone in this thread who is fabricating rumors about me, starting with Georgina. I hated drama. I preferred solving my problems with quick, brutal efficiency. Once my lawyer replied with a professional, understood, I went to sleep. But to my surprise, before my lawyer's letters could even be sent, my employees decided to double down. The next morning, as soon as I sat down in my office, my laptop kept pinging with new email notifications. I clicked on them. Every single one was a resignation letter. Even the reasons they wrote were identical. It was clearly a coordinated strike. If they thought they could intimidate me with a mass walkout, they were sorely mistaken. I chuckled, and right on cue, someone tagged me in the Slack group chat. Jessica, please approve my resignation. Thanks. Jessica, mine too. I took a screenshot of my flooded inbox and dropped it into the group chat. I typed, Georgina convinced you all to quit, yet she hasn't sent in her own resignation. The chat went dead silent. A few minutes later, Georgina typed back defensively. My internet was just lagging. Almost instantly, her resignation letter popped up in my inbox. I nodded in satisfaction. Since they wanted to stand in solidarity, they might as well go down together. I didn't reply to any of them, nor did I approve the letters yet. Instead, I called Grace and Margaret into my office. Nobody knew what we discussed during that hour. All I knew was that the moment they stepped out, the rest of the office pounced on them. Grace, what did Jessica say to you? Did she ask you to convince us to stay? Before Grace could even answer, Georgina scoffed loudly. Of course she did. If we all leave, the company will literally fall apart. She's desperate. Grace ignored the noise and simply looked at them with pity. You guys are going to regret this. The office erupted into mocking laughter. It was at that exact moment that I opened my office door and stepped out. The laughter died down instantly. I swept my gaze across the smug faces in the room and said calmly, "Everyone, conference room. Now." Once everyone was seated, their faces practically glowing with triumph, I couldn't help but curl my lips into a smile. I didn't approve your resignations immediately because I wanted to make sure your final paychecks are calculated correctly before you leave. We will do this one by one. Once your paycheck is settled, I'll approve your resignation. Let's begin. The conference room was deathly quiet. A moment ago, the team had been wearing smug, triumphant smirks, convinced that a collective resignation would force my hand. Now, as I pulled open a thick leather binder full of individual employee files, the room's temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Let's start with you, Sarah, I said smoothly, leaning back in my chair. As our senior manager, you ought to set an example. Sarah cleared her throat, adjusting her blazer to put on a show of confidence. Jessica, there's really nothing to calculate. You just owe us our full salary for the current pay period, plus any accrued paid time off. We're willing to waive the 2-week notice if you let us walk today. Waive notice. I chuckled softly, opening Sarah's signed contract from 3 years ago. Sarah, when you joined Firefly, you took advantage of our discretionary relocation and housing advance program. Do you remember? Sarah's face stiffened. That was 3 years ago. And you renewed that advance clause last November when you moved into your new downtown apartment, I reminded her, flipping to the page bearing her signature. The terms clearly state that the $1,500 monthly stipend is a voluntary retention bonus funded out of net profits. In exchange, any employee who accepts an emergency advance on rent must remain with the company for at least 12 months following the distribution. If you resign voluntarily before that term expires, the advance immediately converts into a personal loan due upon termination. Sarah's eyes widened in horror. Wait, what? You took a 6-month advance of $9,000 in January to pay your landlord upfront for a discounted rate, I said, tapping my pen on the line. Your current paycheck for this half month comes out to $3,200. Subtracting the $9,000 contractual advance you owe the company, you currently owe Firefly Creative $5,800. I expect a wire transfer by the end of the week, or HR will issue a formal collection demand. The room gasped. Sarah's face drained of all color. Jessica, you can't be serious. Sarah stammered, her voice cracking. I have a mortgage. I have a child. You gave me that money. I gave you that money as a benefit to support an employee who promised loyalty, I replied without a trace of pity. You chose to break that contract today to play labor union organizer with a fresh graduate. I turned my head toward the rest of the room. The same terms apply to 4 others here who took advance distributions. As for non-compete and intellectual property clauses, Firefly holds exclusive rights to all creative campaigns developed over the last 36 months. Any client outreach, attempt to poach accounts, or misuse of company templates will result in an immediate suit for breach of fiduciary duty. Panicked whispers immediately broke out among the staff. They looked at each other, realizing for the first time that they hadn't just walked out on a job, they had shattered a legal and financial safety net that no other company in the city would ever offer them. Georgina, seeing her mob losing their nerve, slammed her palm on the table. Don't listen to her. She's just trying to scare us. Labor laws protect employees. You can't make us pay back benefits. I can and I will because they were structured as contingent retention advances, reviewed and stamped by the top corporate firm in the state, I said, turning my eyes onto her. Which brings us to you, Georgina. Georgina squared her shoulders, tossing her hair. What about me? I've only been here a week. You don't owe me anything, and I definitely don't owe you a dime. Financially? No. I agreed, sliding a fresh document across the table toward her. Position-wise? Your 5-day internship contract contained a mandatory confidentiality and social media non-disparagement agreement. More importantly, yesterday evening, you took a photo inside our private corporate lobby without authorization and published defamatory statements online regarding my family and my character. Georgina's lip twitched, but she forced a sneer. It's a free country. I posted my opinion, and that photo was taken in a public space. The lobby of a private commercial building is not a public space, I corrected her coldly. And accusing someone of being a sugar baby while publishing clear photographs of an individual without consent crosses directly into civil defamation and criminal harassment. Before she could spit out another self-righteous rebuttal, the conference room door opened. My assistant led two men in tailored charcoal suits into the room. The lead attorney, Mr. Harrison, head of litigation at Harrison and Vance LLP, placed a thick legal folder squarely in front of Georgina. Georgina Vance, no relation to the founder, you are hereby served with a formal litigation hold and lawsuit for defamation per se, tortious interference with business relations, and intentional infliction of emotional distress, Mr. Harrison announced, his voice echoing with practiced authority. Our firm has already secured an expedited subpoena for Reddit Inc. to preserve all server logs, IP addresses, and account telemetry associated with your handles. Georgina looked at the heavy legal documents, then at the sharp, uncompromising faces of the high-powered lawyers standing over her. The arrogance that had sustained her for the past 48 hours finally crumbled into raw, terrified shock. Grace Margaret, I said, turning away from the chaos. Please pack your things. From the main floor. You're moving into the executive offices upstairs starting today. The mass exit from Firefly Creative was executed in less than 2 hours. Once the legal reality hit them, the ex-employees packed their boxes in near total silence. Gone were the triumphant smiles and smug glances. Sarah tried twice to approach my office door to explain her perspective, but my security detail politely blocked her path. By noon, the main floor was entirely empty except for Grace and Margaret, who were quietly organizing their new project management desks upstairs. I sat in my office, sipping a cold brew, while Mr. Harrison walked me through the legal strategy. We've already dispatched formal cease and desist letters to the top 20 commenters on that Reddit thread who engaged in doxing and severe defamation, Mr. Harrison explained, sliding a tablets toward me. And as for Miss Georgina, her situation is remarkably foolish. She didn't even bother using a VPN or an anonymous email when registering her secondary accounts. Did she really think an internet handle made her invincible? I asked, amused. Inexperienced youth often mistake online anonymity for total immunity, Mr. Harrison said with a dry smile. Her parents will likely be notified by tomorrow morning when process servers deliver the official court filings to their residential address. Meanwhile, on Reddit, the thread was already undergoing a chaotic shift. After the legal hold was issued, several users noticed that the original poster, Georgina, had suddenly attempted to delete all her posts and scrub her comment history. But in the age of the internet, screenshots are forever. A popular legal commentator on Reddit had picked up the story and posted a detailed breakdown titled, Analysis: Why the Gen Z Intern Who Slandered Firefly Creative is About to Get Financially Ruined. The thread read, for anyone following the drama surrounding Firefly Creative, the OP completely faked the narrative. Firefly is famous in the industry for having an insane benefit package, $1,500 cash stipends, 4-day workweeks, free food, zero micromanagement. The intern demanded that the founder provide free luxury apartments and let them keep the $1,500 cash stipend. When the owner gave them a choice, the intern started a slander campaign online, taking creepy secret photos of the founder's father, who turns out to be the CEO of Sky Group, and calling her a sugar baby. Word on the street is that top-tier litigation attorneys have already stepped in. Defamation per se against a billionaire heiress? Good luck surviving that lawsuit. The comment section instantly flipped. Holy shit, is this real? Imagine throwing away a dream job with a $1,500 monthly housing allowance because an intern brainwashed you. I work in tech, and we don't even get $200 for transit. Those employees who resigned were out of their minds. Wait, so the guy in the picture was literally her dad? The intern called her boss's dad a sugar daddy. LMAO, she's beyond cooked. If Firefly Creative is hiring, please look at my resume. I will work 80 hours a week for a 4-day schedule and $1,500 rent stipend. I closed the app, feeling a quiet sense of satisfaction. The internet court of public opinion was fickle, but objective truth always prevailed when backed by unflinching force. While the online space burned, Sarah and the rest of the ex-employees were holding a desperate emergency meeting at a local diner down the street from our office. Sarah was staring at her phone, her hands trembling as she reviewed her bank account balance. Without the upcoming paycheck, and with Firefly demanding the $5,800 advance repayment, she was facing immediate financial distress. Georgina promised us that Jessica would panic. Another former senior designer, Marcus, slammed his coffee cup onto the table. She said Jessica couldn't run the company without us. She said we held all the leverage. Where is Georgina, anyway? Another employee asked anxiously. She left the building 20 minutes ago, crying after those lawyers handed her that stack of papers, Sarah said, her voice shaking with growing dread. Guys, what have we done? It's fine. We're experienced professionals. Marcus tried to reassure the group, though his voice lacked conviction. Firefly's reputation gave us great portfolio pieces. We can all find new jobs by next week. Jobs that respect us. They all nodded, desperately trying to convince themselves that they had made the right choice. But deep down, a dark shadow of doubt was already beginning to spread. The real world is a cold place for people who trade gold for copper. Over the next 2 weeks, the former staff of Firefly Creative began applying frantically to every agency and corporate marketing department in the region. Sarah was the first to realize how brutal the job market actually was. Sitting in a cramped interview room at a mid-tier advertising agency, Sarah straightened her jacket, trying to project senior-level confidence. Across the table sat a tired-looking HR director and an aggressive VP of operations. Your portfolio from Firefly Creative is impressive, Sarah, the VP noted, leafing through her printouts. 4-day workweek, high creative autonomy, major client retention. But I have to ask, why did you leave after 3 years? Sarah had prepared a polished, corporate-friendly excuse. I felt I had reached a ceiling at Firefly and wanted to pursue new challenges in a more fast-paced environment. The HR director lowered her glasses, looking at Sarah with a bizarre, almost mocking expression. A new challenge? Sarah, the marketing world is small. Everyone knows what happened at Firefly Creative 2 weeks ago. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. I don't know what you mean. The Reddit scandal? The mass resignation engineered by an intern? The HR director chuckled coldly. We speak with recruitment agencies all the time. Word got out immediately that Firefly's entire staff walked out because you wanted free luxury housing on top of a $1,500 monthly cash allowance. That's not what happened. We were mistreated. Mistreated? The VP interrupted, slamming Sarah's file shut. You were given a 4-day workweek, unlimited Starbucks, customized birthday gifts, and a monthly cash stipend higher than most entry-level salaries in this city. And you walked out on a founder who gave you a chance after a multi-year employment gap. Sarah opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Furthermore, the VP continued ruthlessly. We conducted a standard background reference check. When we contacted Firefly Creative's HR department, they provided a strictly factual verification of your employment, noting that you resigned without notice while owing the company $5,800 in unfulfilled retention advances. We cannot hire someone who demonstrates such poor judgment, entitlement, and lack of professional loyalty, the HR director said bluntly. This interview is over. Sarah walked out of the skyscraper into the humid afternoon air, her knees shaking. She pulled out her phone and checked the group chat she had formed with the other former employees. It was filled with frantic, panic-stricken messages. Marcus, guys, I just got turned down by 3 agencies today. 2 of them explicitly mentioned the Firefly Reddit post. They think we're entitled toxic employees. Elena, same here. One interviewer literally laughed when I asked if they provided a transit allowance. They offered me $55,000 a year for 60 hours a week, with mandatory weekend shifts. David, I can't pay my rent next month without the $1,500 stipend. My landlord just sent me an eviction warning. Sarah, what do we do? Sarah stared at the screen, tears of regret welling up in her eyes. They had given up paradise because they listened to the bitter, manipulative envy of a 22-year-old intern who had been at the company for less than a week. Meanwhile, back at Firefly Creative, the scene was entirely different. I spent the afternoon interviewing new candidates. With the Reddit story going viral, thousands of top-tier resumes had flooded our portal. Experienced designers, senior copywriters, and elite strategists from major multinational firms were practically begging for an opportunity to join us. Grace and Margaret were sitting beside me, assisting with the selection process. In just 2 weeks, both girls had stepped up remarkably, proving themselves to Be highly capable, detail-oriented, and fiercely loyal. Jessica, Grace said, pointing to a candidate's profile. This applicant was a lead director at a Fortune 500 firm. She said she's willing to take a slight title drop just to work under our 4-day workweek model. Great, I smiled, approving the interview schedule. Set it up. And remember, technical skill is important, but character and gratitude are non-negotiable. Just then, my desk phone rang. It was Mr. Harrison. Jessica. Harrison's voice was crisp. We have finalized the service of process on Georgina Vance, and her parents have just reached out to our firm in a absolute panic. An hour later, a middle-aged couple rushed into the reception lobby of Harrison and Vance, LLP. It was Georgina's parents. Her father, Mr. Arthur Vance, was a mid-level subcontractor whose firm relied heavily on construction contracts awarded by commercial real estate conglomerates, specifically subsidiaries owned by Sky Group. Sitting across from Mr. Harrison and myself in a high-floor glass conference room, Arthur Vance looked pale, his shirt damp with sweat. Beside him, Georgina sat curled up in a chair, her head hung low, all her previous arrogance completely eradicated. Miss Vance, Founder Vance, Arthur stammered, bowing repeatedly toward me.
I'm so deeply sorry.
We had no idea what this foolish girl was doing. She lied to us, telling us she was doing great at her new job. Dad, stop bowing to her, Georgina whimpered, though her voice lacked any real
Conviction.
She's abusing her wealth to intimidate us. Shut your mouth. Arthur turned on his daughter, roaring in a fury that made Georgina flinch violently. You ignorant brat, do you have any idea what you've
Done?
Arthur turned back to me, his hands shaking as he placed a folded letter on the table. Miss Vance, this morning the procurement department at Sky Infrastructure suspended 3 of my company's active bidding accounts, citing reputational risks associated with executive family misconduct. If those contracts are cancelled, my company will go bankrupt. Dozens of people will lose their jobs. I sat back, sipping my tea calmly. Mr. Vance, your daughter didn't just express an opinion. She conducted an intentional, orchestrated smear campaign against my company and my family. She posted photographs of my father online, accused me of being a kept woman, and manipulated my entire staff into a coordinated revolt. I know. I read the legal summons. Arthur slapped his own thigh in frustration, tears of distress in his eyes. She's young. She's stupid. She's been ruined by social media, brain rot. Please, Miss Vance, I beg you, don't destroy our family over her stupidity. Georgina looked up, her eyes red and swollen. Jessica, I was wrong, okay?
I
was just jealous. You're the same age as me, but you own a company, drive a luxury car, and everyone loves you. I had to work so hard just to get an unpaid internship, and you gave away $1,500 like it was pocket change. It wasn't fair. I looked at her, my expression utterly devoid of emotion. Fair? I echoed softly. Georgina, my parents built their empire over 40 years of cutthroat corporate battles, high-risk investments, and endless labor. My wealth isn't a crime, but using your envy to fabricate malicious lies and destroy other people's livelihoods is. What do we need to do? Arthur begged, leaning across the table. We will pay damages. We will issue whatever apology you want. Just please drop the civil lawsuit and lift the commercial restrictions on my firm. Mr. Harrison slid a formal settlement agreement across the table. Here are our non-negotiable terms, Harrison stated with icy precision. 1. A full, unedited video apology filmed by Georgina, detailing every lie she fabricated, posted across all her social media accounts and pinned for 6 months. 2. A formal written confession submitted to the court, acknowledging full liability for civil defamation and tortious interference.
3.
A monetary settlement of $150,000 for damages and legal fees, payable in installments by the Vance family. 4. Permanent blacklisting. Georgina will sign an injunction prohibiting her from ever publishing, commenting, or engaging in any online discourse regarding Jessica Vance, Firefly Creative, or Sky Group. Arthur didn't hesitate for a single second. We will sign right now.
Dad.
$150,000? Georgina gasped in terror. That's my entire college fund. You don't deserve a college fund. Arthur snapped brutally, grabbing a pen and forcing it into her hand.
Sign it.
Sign it right now. or I will disown you. Today, trembling, tears streaming down her face, Georgina signed her name on the settlement documents. As they prepared to leave, I stood up and called out to her one last time. Georgina. She turned around slowly, looking broken and humiliated. You wanted a humane workplace, I said quietly. Humane treatment is built on mutual respect. When you treat genuine generosity with hostility and entitlement, the world will show you what true coldness looks like. Remember this lesson for the rest of your life. Georgina bit her lip so hard it almost bled, nodded weakly, and was dragged out of the office by her father. With Georgina's public video apology sweeping across local social media and Reddit, the truth was completely laid bare. The internet exploded once again, but this time, the narrative was absolute. Georgina was branded a toxic, envious serial liar, while Firefly Creative was cemented as the single most desirable boutique company in the city. For the ex-employees who had followed Georgina off the cliff, this video was the final nail in their collective coffins. One rainy Tuesday morning, 3 weeks after the mass resignation, I arrived at the office building in my private car. As I walked through the glass, sliding doors of the main lobby, I saw a group of familiar figures standing nervously near the security turnstiles. It was Sarah, Marcus, and the rest of the former Firefly team. They looked exhausted, disheveled, and pale. Sarah was holding a large bakery box of artisanal pastries and a handwritten card. Marcus was holding a folder of project updates. When they saw me walk in, their eyes lit up with desperate hope, and they rushed forward. Jessica, Sarah cried out, stepping in front of me before security could intervene. Jessica, please give us 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes. I stopped, gesturing for the security guards to stand down.
Sarah.
What are you doing here? Sarah's eyes were bloodshot. She looked like she hadn't slept in a week. Jessica, we saw Georgina's apology video, Sarah sobbed, her hands shaking as she held out the pastries. We were lied to. We were manipulated. That toxic girl brainwashed all of us into believing you were taking advantage of us.
We
were so stupid. Marcus stepped forward, his tone pleading. Jessica, please. None of us have been able to find decent work. The agencies out there are monsters. They want us working 70 hours a week for half of what you paid us. They don't give housing stipends, they don't give transit allowances, they don't even let us take a lunch break without tracking our minutes. We miss Firefly, Jessica. Another designer cried out. We miss the culture.
We
miss working for you. We're so sorry for how we acted in that meeting. I looked at the group of people who had once been the core of my company. Sarah, I said gently, my voice calm and measured. When you sat in that conference room 3 weeks ago, I didn't fire you. I gave you a choice. I asked you to think reasonably and discuss things like adults. Do you remember what you said to me? Sarah's face flushed with deep shame. I was confused. You told me that company housing was convenient, and then you silently supported an intern who demanded double stipends while accusing me of being cheap. I reminded her. You didn't care about the company. You didn't care about our relationship. You saw an opportunity to squeeze more out of a boss who had treated you with nothing but kindness. We were wrong. We will take pay cuts. Sarah begged, dropping to her knees. Right there in the middle of the corporate lobby, tears washing away her makeup. Jessica, please. I have to pay my daughter's tuition. My landlord is kicking me out next week because I couldn't pay rent without the $1,500 stipend. I'll work 6 days a week. I'll take half salary. Just let me come back. Marcus and the others looked on the verge of kneeling as well, their pride completely destroyed by the reality of the open market. I looked down at Sarah, feeling neither hatred nor satisfaction, only a quiet, profound clarity. Sarah, I said softly, when I hired you, I gave you a chance when no one else would because I believed in second chances. But trust is like a glass vase. Once you smash it to pieces out of greed, no amount of tears can glue it back together. Just then, the elevator doors opened behind me. Grace and Margaret stepped out, wearing tailored executive suits, holding iPads, and overseeing a team of 4 vibrant, highly enthusiastic new hires who were laughing and chatting about their upcoming creative campaign. When the new recruits saw me, they immediately smiled and bowed respectfully. Good morning, Founder Jessica. Good morning, I smiled back warmly. Sarah and the ex-employees looked at Grace and Margaret, then at the shiny new team that had replaced them. The contrast was devastating. Grace, whom they had once dismissed as a quiet, incompetent, introverted junior, was now leading Firefly's flagship accounts, making double her previous salary with corporate stock options. Your resignations were processed 3 weeks ago. I turned back to Sarah, my voice firm and absolute. Your positions have been filled by people who appreciate the workplace we've built. Please do not come here again or security will issue formal trespassing notices. Without another word, I walked past them, stepping into the private elevator alongside Grace and Margaret. As the heavy elevator doors slid shut, I caught one final glimpse of Sarah, sitting on the polished marble floor, holding her box of pastries, weeping uncontrollably as her former colleagues stood in silent, crushed despair. 2 months later, Firefly Creative held its annual anniversary gala at the Grand Ballroom of the Van Sky Tower, the premier luxury hotel in the heart of the city. The event was magnificent. Soft jazz filled the air, crystal chandeliers glittered overhead, and representatives from the city's top corporate partners, design agencies, and media outlets were in attendance. Firefly had not only survived the mass resignation, it had thrived beyond expectation. With our story going viral for all the right reasons, client acquisition had quadrupled. We had expanded our staff to 30 elite creatives, each handpicked through a rigorous process that prioritized integrity and emotional intelligence. Alongside professional talent, we kept our famous benefits: the 4-day workweek, the $1,500 monthly cash stipend, the free Starbucks, and the stress-free environment. But now those benefits were guarded by a clear, professional culture of mutual respect. I stood on the glass balcony overlooking the skyline, holding a glass of champagne, thinking about how far we've come. A refined, commanding voice spoke from behind me. I turned to see my mother, Mrs. Vance, chairman of Sky Group, wearing an elegant, dark emerald gown. Beside her was my father, Mr. Rodriguez, looking sharp in a classic tuxedo. Mom, Dad, I smiled, walking over to embrace them. Your father was quite offended when that intern called him a sugar daddy on Reddit. My mother teased gently, a sharp, amused glint in her eyes. He spent 3 days looking in the mirror asking if he really looked that old. Hey, I look distinguished, my dad protested with a laugh, giving me a warm hug. In all seriousness, Jessica, your mother and I are incredibly proud of how you handled the situation. You didn't hide behind our name, and you didn't let anger dictate your actions. You used law, logic, and decisive strength. Kindness without boundaries is just weakness, I said, looking out over the crowded ballroom where Grace and Margaret were confidently giving an interview to a major business magazine. I started Firefly because I wanted to create a humane workplace. But I learned that to protect a gentle environment, the leader must be willing to wield a sharp sword. My mother clinked her glass against mine. To Firefly Creative. To Firefly, I smiled. Later that evening, as the gala reached its peak, my assistant handed me my
Phone.
Jessica, a quick update on the civil enforcement, she whispered. Georgina's family has paid the first installment of the court settlement. She has enrolled in a regional community college after being rejected by all top local universities. Her social media accounts have been permanently closed. And the former staff? I asked casually. Sarah took an entry-level customer service job at a logistics firm, working 12-hour night shifts for minimum wage. Marcus moved back to his hometown after failing to pay his lease. None of them have been able to re-enter top-tier creative agencies. I nodded slowly, handing the phone back. Their fates were no longer my concern. They had made their choices, and the world had delivered its inevitable verdict. I walked back into the vibrant, music-filled ballroom, greeted by the loud cheers and bright smiles of my new team. To founder Jessica, Grace raised her glass high, leading a toast
To the best
company and the best boss in the world. To Jessica, the entire room echoed, their voices filled with genuine warmth, respect, and enthusiasm. I raised my glass, looking at the bright, dedicated faces around me, and smiled. From the bottom of my heart, Firefly Creative was finally exactly what it was meant to be, a true sanctuary for those who deserved it.